We're level 6, group 3. I'm Tom Gibbs, working with Henry Crofts and a new addition to the team, Amy Potter. We're working on Ship Happens, a time and resource management game where players must cooperatively work together to overcome hazards and events. From the main menu, players have a choice to load into either the tutorial or the main game. Once either the tutorial or main game scene has been selected, a transition is made to the player selection screen. The game is designed for 2 players, and this will be the default party size option, although as a stretch goal we plan to make this available for a party size up to 4. The tutorial stages have been designed to introduce each mechanic individually to the player in a step-by-step fashion. The first mechanic we decided to introduce to the player is the action of firing the cannons at the enemy ships.
The scene opens up with 2 players being greeted by the crow's nest, giving out commands to head towards the hold of the ship, where players will be able to use the D-pad menu to retrieve items from the hold, which will be shown by a pulsating circle. When players take the items to the cannons, which they will be guided to by the crow's nest and by the animation that will play, they can then interact with the cannon to load the items in. While the players are loading the items into the cannons, the UI shader underneath the players will start to fill up to give the players an indication of how much longer is left to complete the task that they are currently trying to complete. The cannons each have a UI element above them which will show the items loaded into the cannons. They will go green when an item is loaded in, it will be red while there is no item. Once both the cannon and the gunpowder have been loaded in, the UI will change to a torch to indicate to the player that they can now fire the cannon. During these stages of the tutorial, the enemy ships will stop in front of the cannons to give the player a chance to go through a learn, practice, master loop to familiarize themselves with the mechanic of loading the cannons and firing them at the correct time in preparation for the enemy ships coming up and down the sides of the ship. Following this, an enemy ship will sail past the player, which they are guaranteed to miss, to introduce the players to the mechanics that will happen should they miss an enemy, which is damage to the ship's hull and the deck starting to flood.
The final version of the tutorial will feature the introduction of each mechanic individually in this fashion, separated by periods of free play of each of the introduced mechanics. This is approximately 1 minute into the main gameplay level. You can see the players cooperating and communicating in order to respond to the incoming hazards identified by the various UI elements. The game manager dictates the number and frequency of types of hazard which will be presented to the player. The crow's nest UI then informs the players of the incoming hazards. As you can see in this level, the full functionality of the mechanics has been implemented. The primary mechanic of loading the cannons from the hold and firing at enemy ships firing back, causing damage to the deck and flooding the deck, ultimately leading to the lose condition, and the whale event, which will disrupt play by knocking any player not holding onto the ship's mast into the sea, causing a respawn. The rock hazard will spawn, which will require players to abandon their activities in order to reach the ship's wheel and steer the ship out of harm's way in order to avoid further damage. Seagulls will fly above the deck, dropping mess, which will slow and reduce the mobility of the players. Using the interactable items on the ship's deck, players are able to retrieve the bucket to bail water to reduce the water level. They're able to retrieve the mop to clean the bird mess, increasing their available range, and retrieve planks of wood from the ship's hold in order to repair open damage on the ship's deck. In this case, as you can see from the bottom UI timer bar, the team managed to survive the level and as such are taken to the reward screen. On the reward screen, a short sequence is played, building suspense as a final reward chest is open, revealing to the player the item that they have been rewarded with for successful completion.
This scenario is about 2.5 minutes into gameplay, and as you can see, the players haven't been very coordinated. They've allowed a lot of enemy ships to go past without being fired upon, as they haven't prepared the cannons. and this has resulted in a vast amount of damage to the ship's deck. This results in the ship's deck being flooded, which will ultimately lead to the lose condition, where players will be returned to the main menu without rewards.
Here we have 2 playtesters from our target demographic with no prior exposure to the game, playtesting from the opening main menu scene through the completion of the game tutorial.
I think we've got to load this cannon.
What we need to...
Oh, the fire torch. I mean, how do I interact with it? I've dropped it.
Pick it up then.
I'm hitting A.
You need to put a cannonball in it.
Get a cannonball. Maybe I have to. Oh, there's one.
It's on the floor.
Did you pick it up? I think I've got it. Get another one.
My character's just constantly spinning.
Where's the cannonball? There it is.
How do you pick it up?
I think it's A. Oh, I've got it. I hit A again and it's... I'm gonna get a different one. Maybe we need this barrel up now.
Where you going? I thought this was a tutorial.
I don't know what we're supposed to... Right, now you try it. Hit A or something.
I'm hitting it.
We need gunpowder. But I think that's meant to be that bucket, but it's really hard to tell what it is.
Oh, okay, now that somehow the cannonball's gone in even I didn't press any buttons.
Right. We need that bucket. We need the...
And now the cannonball's gone, and now it's back. Oh, I picked it back up.
Oh, you can... I'll get this gunpowder thing. Oh, what's that?
You need the fire stick, grab the fire stick.
Shoot it.
I think I shot it.
You did. Now, what's it want us to do? I think it wants us to... Oh, Tom, quick. Shoot the next one.
Well, we haven't loaded it. I can't shoot if we haven't loaded it.
It won't let me get anything else. I just can't tell if I've got anything, like if I've got a cannonball or if I haven't.
I understand it now, I know what I've done.
What?
You have to press A, then you have to wait a long time for it to actually work. That's what you said, little thing on the floor.
Oh.
Yeah, and then you get the fire stick.
Okay.
You got the fire stick, go to the... I'll load the other one.
Oh, that one's done.
I think you have to hold it to put the item in. You just did the cannonball out, you might.
I'm gonna drop this. And
Well,
I'll get
you
the
have the
barrel.
cannonball already. Put the cannonball back in. You stole it. Hold A. Hold it. Maybe you don't have it.
You might have it.
No, I don't have it.
Where's it? Is that the gunpowder?
Yeah, I can get it. Load.
Frequent feedback received from playtesting sessions, including this one, was players' inability to understand when items had been retrieved from the ship's hold, the cooldown time on the ship's hold, and the task duration being too long. All of which can only be solved through playtesting and iteration.